I'm Jay Kenedy, Director of Policy and Research at the Directory of Social Change. And I'm here to talk about managing relationships with funders during a crisis. Double espresso, was it? I thought I'd share some tips and experience because, like many other organizations, DSC has had to navigate some tricky times lately. And partly that involved reaching out to our funders and having some different conversations with them about various projects that we've got on the go. So in this edition of Espresso Express, I thought I'd give you about 7 tips. Hopefully they will help you out. And if not, well, you've got a free coffee out of it, so what's not to like? The first thing I'd say is it's important to know your funder. And maybe that's easier said than done, but it's really important to know the people at your funder and sort of the main contacts that you have, as well as their priorities and what they're interested in, and to try to maintain that relationship over time on a personal level, not just as a sort of mechanical, professional sort of thing, in my opinion, because that's that kind of trust that you build up can be a real advantage during times like this. So if you've done that, great, it's going to help you out a lot. If you haven't, it's never too late to start. So reach out and have a Zoom call or a telephone chat. Introduce yourself. Try to find some common ground and build a rapport. Secondly, I think honesty is the best policy in these circumstances. To a degree, it's a judgment call, but I think a lot of charities are worrying that if they get in touch with the funder and tell them exactly, what's going on and how severe it might be, that they'll be worried that the funding might get pulled, or the funder's going to basically increase scrutiny and try to call them up on things being delivered or not. But as I say, I think it's important to be open about the circumstances you're facing, because that also allows you to be really clear about what you need. And that's my next point, which is trying to be really clear about what you need. A lot of foundations in particular, I think, now are waking up to the reality of what's going on for their grantees, or many of their grantees. And it took a little while. They were a little bit behind the curve that many of you will have been on. But it's the consciousness is starting to seep in. And so they should be receptive and open to a discussion about what's going on with you and what you need. And there's a range, I think, of things you could request or you might need to happen. So, for example, changing reporting requirements or deadlines for delivering monitoring information, or even schedules for delivering the project. Maybe you need to completely reshape a grant-funded program to deliver in very different circumstances because the external environment's totally changed. Maybe you need to think about or revise your metrics of success or outcomes, or what's actually deliverable in the time period that you have. Maybe you have a project already agreed in principle and you're just waiting for the final sign-off. But does it now need to be redesigned because the circumstances have changed? And from the funder's perspective, we're also seeing that they may be doing that from their point of view, so not delivering things they've already agreed to because of the crisis. So that's a slightly different conversation. Do you need to ask them to boost funding because for an existing program because it's just oversubscribed, or there's just too much demand and you can't manage it? Or perhaps it's more existential and your organization's in a crisis of survival. You might need to ask them to de-restrict their funding to help you temporarily manage cash flow questions, or move payments forward that are scheduled for later in the year, or even provide additional funds just for core costs to keep you going. I'm going to pause now to let you have a think about some of those and what might apply to you. In all of this, I think it's worth noting that your funder should have an interest in you keeping going and you continuing to provide your services. that's after all why they funded you in the first place. You're the way that they meet their own charitable objectives. And if you go down, their investment goes down as well. So take confidence from that. Okay, just a few more points and we'll finish. I think it's useful to think about points of escalation. And by that I mean, at what level are you going to start the conversation? At your end and their end. So for example, if you're the project manager for a funded program, you probably want to reach out to the grants manager initially and have a chat or even outline the issues that you're going through and what might need to change. And then you can express that a little bit more formally, and then they might need to take it back to their senior team, and there can be a back and forth sort of negotiation depending on whether you're able to get everything that you need or not. But you've got that place to sort of escalate to sort of as part of the negotiation process. Also, it's probably time to brush up on those terms and conditions. You know those things, that 50-page document that you signed when you got the grant letter and you filed away in a cabinet? Bring those out and look at them again, because they may come into play. Particularly if you have a contract and there are clauses which regulate quote-unquote change requests that may define some of the parameters of what you're able to change and how that can be changed. I think it's important to track everything in writing, and in these circumstances, I think a good way to do it is to outline what's going on with your organization, what you need from your funder in a letter, a formal letter, which I think gives that sense of weightiness, that this is a serious conversation in a way that an email doesn't necessarily. And then email that to them, because we're not really using the post office these days. And then that can then be the basis for a follow-on discussion by email or telephone, and it's something that they can take away to other decision makers in their organization. But keep track of all of that, including telephone conversations that you have. You might need them for future reference. Finally, especially if they've been really helpful, thank them. It never hurts to say thanks, both individually and collectively. And again, that goes back to my point at the beginning about building and maintaining relationships. If they've been really good, thank them publicly. Use it, do so on your social media, because that sends a signal that you appreciate what they've done, and it also sends a positive message to other funders that they're doing good practice. I hope you enjoyed our talk. Have a great day.